What's up, my good peoples? I am James Anderson, and this is Be Transformed, where we help people discover identity, purpose, and vision. Today, we're talking about faith. Faith is like the foundation of the kingdom. It's how you access what is so readily available without limits. In Luke 17, Jesus had been doing some teaching, and in response to that, the disciples were like, dude, increase our faith. And Jesus said, he told them the story, and it went like this. He said, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you could tell this mulberry tree to uproot itself and plant itself in the sea, and it would obey you. So the disciples asked, increase our faith. And Jesus told them a story. The disciples asked, increase our faith, and he painted them a picture. You could look at that and you could think, man, thanks for nothing. The problem with that is that Jesus is not a thanks for nothing kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that brings more than you could ask for or imagine. So then where does faith come from? Paul in Romans 10 says faith comes from hearing, and that of the Word of God. Faith comes from hearing, and that of the truth. I don't think it's limited to hearing. I think it's knowledge. It's the knowledge of the truth. So then what Jesus did makes a lot more sense. So if faith comes from hearing, the disciples had a picture in their own mind of what they thought faith was, and they thought they needed this massive amount. So Jesus, he gives them a different idea. He gives them more knowledge, more understanding. So he says, no, man, if you have faith just as small as like a crumb of bread, you could do this thing that was impossible. But Jesus is the kind of guy who does more than you could ask or think. So he goes on. It's about to go down, my good peoples. He says, let's say that you have a servant who's out in the field working, or maybe he's tending the sheep. Well, when he's done and he comes in for the day, you're not going to tell him, dude, just sit down and eat. Instead, you're going to say, no, make my food and wait on me until I'm done. Then you could go and eat and drink. He says, when that servant's done, you're not going to thank him because he was only doing what he was told. He said, likewise, when you have done all that you were told to do, your response will be that we are just unworthy servants doing our duty. So he says, let's just say you have a servant in the field who's working, all right? He's likening this scenario to faith. So he says you've got a servant out there working or tending the sheep. Okay, that's like his duties are totally achievable. What that servant is asked to do is so doable. And if he fails, he would be like punished because it's so doable. So he says, okay, so once you're out in the field and you've done doing what you were doing out there, well, now you come in because your duties aren't over. You're not done. Just because you did that out in the field doesn't mean you're done. So now you come and you work some more. And when it's all said and done, you're not getting thanked. He's like, your response is, dude, we're just doing our duties. So Jesus says, when you have done all that you were asked to do, when you have done, completed, finished, all that you were asked to do, that means that you succeeded in what you were asked to do. So what were you asked to do? You were asked to let your light so shine before men that they see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Jesus said, go into all the world and make disciples of nations. He says, as you go, heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out the demons, and cleanse the lepers. And when you have done this, tell them that the kingdom of heaven has come upon them. He said, when you are done doing what you were told to do, what is your response? Dude, we're just doing our duties. All right, so if faith comes from hearing, what do you do with what you hear? You believe in it. So faith is the belief in the unseen. right? It's the substance of things hoped for. It's certain of what you do not see. So faith is belief in the truth. So what is belief, right? Because there's a difference between mental agreement and belief. Mental agreement is when you agree with the concept. So it says that you are justified through faith. All right, so mental agreement would be like, oh man, that concept sounds nice. Yeah, I believe that. But then you go home and you cultivate these thoughts that are contrary, that are the opposite of you being justified. You go home, I don't know if God loves me. I don't know, I couldn't do that. Or, I just don't think I'm good enough, or I'm not holy enough, or I'm not this, I'm not that. What is that? What are those thoughts? Those thoughts have nothing to do with faith, and they have nothing to do with the truth. So that would be mental agreement. So what's belief? Belief is something that you conform to. So it starts affecting the way you think. So it affects your perspective, your priorities, your decisions, your actions, and your results. So your insides start to be reflected on your outsides. So if through faith you are justified, that means that you can no longer consciously cultivate thoughts that you're not justified. Because it's only through faith, that's belief, in the fact that you're justified, that you obtain it. It's not in your actions or your ability to manifest some kind of feeling inside. It's through the belief. That belief then causes you to think differently. It causes you to look at the world differently. It causes you to make decisions differently because your position is founded in God. That is faith. Dude, this is interesting. So there was a father who had a son, and his son was possessed by demons. And so he went to the disciples who were doing all these miracles. And he says, dude, can you guys help me out? And the disciples like, come on, we got this. So they're praying and they're doing all they can. And at the end of it, dude, nothing happens. And so you got to imagine this father, man, who's got this son whom he loves. And it's just like, this situation sucks. And so got to be heartbroken, down, depressed, like aching, walks up to Jesus. And in that state of mind, says, if you can do anything, could you help me? That guy, in his state of mind, based upon his past experiences, walks up to Jesus and said, dude, if it's possible. Jesus, in his perspective, with this look of like, excuse me? If it's possible, shoot. Everything is possible for those who believe. That guy's response was, I believe, help me with my unbelief. Everything is possible for those who believe. This is interesting. So let's say you got some vision cooking in your mind parts, man. You're picturing yourself living the kingdom. You think, okay, what does it look like for me to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth? What does it look like for me to go into all the world, make disciples? What does it look like for me to make my light so shine before men? That means in a dark place. That means outside of the four walls of a church building. What does that look like for me to live my life in God? So you start cooking up these ideas, this vision. It's no longer a question of if it's possible. That question in the kingdom and in faith doesn't exist anymore. It's no longer, is that possible? I don't know if I could do that. I'm picturing myself, I don't know if I got those gifts. I don't know if I got, there's other people. I don't know if God really wants me to do that. It's no longer a question of, is it possible? Anything is possible for those who believe. It's no longer a question. The only question there is will you make a decision to commit to creating what it is that you see in your mind? So what's that mean, to make a decision to commit? That means that regardless of how long it takes, what it takes or the obstacles faced, you will succeed in what you set out to do. So you look at the Apostle Paul, right? He had purpose and he had vision. He was chasing after this idea of reaching all of the Gentiles. He didn't care how far he had to go. He didn't care how long it was going to take, and he didn't care about the obstacles he faced. So he crossed seas. And because he crossed seas, he was shipwrecked. He went into towns and told them about the kingdom of heaven, which they didn't want to hear. So that got him beaten, whipped, flogged, beaten with rods. That got him stoned. He went on journeys where he had no clothes, he had no food. He got tired. But he didn't care because he made a decision to chase after the purpose that God had given him. So it didn't matter how long it was going to take, what it was going to take, or the obstacles he faced. He was going to chase after this until his last breath. Jesus came for the cross. So he set out on purpose with clear intentions of what he was after, and he accomplished what he was after. You are to live your life like that. It's no longer a question of is it possible. It's a would you dare to step in to everything that you were created to be, where you will find total fulfillment of life. So faith, where does it come from? Faith comes from hearing. It comes from the knowledge of the truth. So how could you know what you have access to if you don't have any knowledge of it? So this adds a reason to reading the Bible. But then when you read it, you have to start applying it. So if you're justified through faith, that means then that you no longer can hold thoughts that you're not justified. If you keep picturing these pictures in your mind, that means that you were created to do it. That means your potential is welling up and it's giving you whiffs. You know, it's giving you pictures. It's letting you know what it is that you're capable of, which means that you're able to do it. You just have to learn how, and you just have to get into it. So faith comes by hearing. But then how do you use faith? Faith is belief in what you hear, in the truth. That means then that it starts to affect your perspective, your priorities, your decisions, your actions, and therefore your results. So now everything in your life starts to reflect what you believe. Everything is possible for those who believe. Change the way you think, change your life. Peace!